Hello everyone. I am Dr. Bhavesh Prasad, anesthesia third year PG resident from GGS Medical College. I will be presenting my oral paper on thoracolumbar kyphoscoliosis with restrictive lung diseases and its anesthetic implications. Kyphoscoliosis is a disorder characterized by a progressive deformity of spine consisting of lateral and posterior curvature of spine. Thoracic deformity poses cardiovascular and pulmonary abnormalities leading to restrictive pulmonary diseases. In addition, in patients with thoracolumbar kyphoscoliosis, lateral curvature and rotation of spine leads to tracheal deviation and a difficult airway. Thus, kyphoscoliosis presents with unique challenges to both anesthesia and surgical teams. Its reported prevalence in the general population varies from 0.3 to 15.3%. However, the prevalence is less than 3% for curves more than 10 degree and less than 0.3% for curves more than 30 degree. It is more common in adolescents and has a female to male ratio of about 3:1. Now the case. A patient, 36-year-old male, height 5 feet 3 inches, weighing 60 kg, with thoracolumbar kyphoscoliosis, was posted for deformity correction of spine. Patient had history of trauma 15 years back and complaining of back pain. No neurological deficit was found. Patient was a known case of hypertension and had history of dyspnea with NYHA grade 2. Patient had no complaint of chest pain or palpitation. Patient had no history of cough, fever, diabetic, TB, asthma or any known allergy. Patient was a known smoker for 10 years. Coming to the investigation part. Investigations revealed hemoglobin of 10 gram and all coagulation profile within normal limits, and rest of the routine investigations were within normal limits. ECG was showing sinus rhythm. Now coming to the X-ray, chest X-ray AP view showed tracheal deviation to the left side, and X-ray spine lateral view showed significant kyphosis at thoracolumbar area. Now, pulmonary function test showed mild restrictive pattern with FVC 50.7% and FEV1 50.8%. Breath holding time was less than 12 seconds and echo was within normal limit with ejection fraction of 60%. Coming to the airway examination, patient had a thyromental distance of less than 6.5 cm and mouth opening around 3 cm. Normal temporomandibular joint mobility, restricted neck movement, and MPG grade 4. Cobb's angle was 60 degree. So basically it was an anticipated difficult airway. Pre-operatively, patient was advised incentive spirometry and transfused with 2 units of whole blood. Patient was kept NPO for 8 hours before surgery and was pre-medicated with ranitidine 150 mg in morning and alprazolam 0.25 mg at night. After taking informed consent for high-risk anesthesia and surgery, post-op requirement of ventilator support, patient was planned for awake fiber optic intubation. Coming to the material and method, the procedure for awake fiber optic intubation was explained to the patient on pre-operative visit and before induction on the day of surgery. No pre-operative sedation was prescribed. Difficult airways management cat was kept ready and the patient shifted on the OT table with 2 units of PRBC in hand. 2 large bore IV lines were secured with 18 and 16 gauge cannula, and routine non-invasive monitoring like heart rate, SBP, DBP, mean arterial pressure, saturation and ECG were done. Nasal prongs were attached with oxygen at 4 liters per minute. Injection glycopyrrolate 0.2 mg IV was administered. After nebulization with 5 ml of 4% lignocaine, the patient's airway was anesthetized with lignocaine viscous, 2% goggles, and lignocaine spray 10% into the laryngopharynx. Bilateral block of glossopharyngeal nerve was done by placing swab soaked in local anesthetic in pyriform fossa on each side for 5 to 10 minutes. Then transtracheal block was given with 5 ml of 2% lignocaine injected through cricothyroid membrane, perpendicular to the plane of cervical spine after confirming position of needle by aspiration through syringe. Now, fiber optic bronchoscope was loaded with 6.5 mm of flexometallic endotracheal tube. Patient was not able to lie supine due to curvature of spine, and he was lying in semi-recumbent position on the operation table supported by pillows and headrest. Now the anesthetist stood on the left side of the patient facing the FOB monitor. After putting in a white block, the bronchoscope was inserted orally and advanced towards the laryngeal envelope. Epiglottis and laryngeal opening were visualized. Patient was instructed to take deep breaths to facilitate identification of the airway. Fiber optic could be negotiated through the vocal cords after spraying lignocaine by spray as you go technique in the areas of partial anesthesia. After the visualization of carina, endotracheal tube was threaded over the FOB until 2 to 3 rings above carina. The breathing circuit was attached and the tube placement was confirmed by both capnography and auscultation. Patient was then induced with injection propofol 150 mg, fentanyl 100 micrograms, and after confirming chest expansion, muscle relaxation was achieved with vecuronium bromide 6 mg loading dose. The ET was firmly secured and anesthesia maintained with oxygen, nitrous oxide and isoflurane. Patient was then positioned prone on Wilson spring. Peripheral nerves, eyes, genitals and bony points were padded and protected. Intraoperatively vitals were maintained. Invasive atrial blood pressure monitoring was done with goal of mean arterial pressure between 60 to 70 mm of mercury. End-tidal carbon dioxide was maintained between 30 to 35. Urine output, temperature and blood loss were measured. 2 unit PRBC were transfused intraoperatively after cross-matching. At the end of the surgery, neuromuscular block was reversed with injection neostigmine 0.05 mg per kg of body weight and injection glycopyrrolate 0.01 mg per kg body weight IV, and patient was extubated. Patient was shifted to intensive care unit and was monitored continuously, and multimodal analgesia was provided with NSAIDs, injection paracetamol and injection morphine as required. This was the position of the patient. Now coming to the discussion part. Kyphoscoliosis results in functional changes with decrease in total lung capacity, vital capacity and a functional residual capacity. The severity of compression is determined by measuring Kopp's angle, which is defined as the angle between the perpendicular of the line drawn parallel to the upper border of the highest and lower border of the lowest vertebrae. If this angle is more than 40 degree, patient is considered for deformity correction. If angle is more than 65 degree, lung volume decreases. In case of more than 100 degree, it is associated with dyspnea and exhaustion, and in case of angle more than 120 degree, it is associated with alveolar hypoxia and respiratory failure. Proper preoperative cardiovascular and pulmonary assessment helps to assess the risk of postoperative ventilatory support. Preoperative blood should be arranged in view of expected intraoperative blood loss. Measures may be taken to decrease intraoperative blood loss with hypotensive anesthesia, antifibrinolytics, avoiding hypothermia, reducing intra-abdominal pressure, and should be replaced with blood transfusion. Blood conservation may be accomplished with preoperative autologous blood donation, acute normovolemic hemodilution and intraoperative blood salvage. Intraoperative normothermia should be maintained with warm IV fluids and warm-up. Mean arterial pressure should be maintained between 60 to 70 mm of mercury to maintain the spinal cord perfusion pressure and urine output at 0.5 ml per kg per hour. The risk of spinal cord damage is related to strength and type of surgical procedure, pressure retraction and manipulation of underlying neural tissue. Spinal cord integrity monitoring should be done with SSEP, MEP and wake-up tests to help safeguard spinal cord functions. Post-operative patients should be monitored in intensive care units, especially those with pre-existing myelopathy, pulmonary dysfunction, cardiovascular diseases, extensive spine surgery, airway edema, or those who have had massive transfusion. Pulmonary complications like ARDS, pneumonia, atelectasis, pulmonary embolism are the most common post-operative complications, and vigilant monitoring, incentive spirometry, and aggressive pulmonary toilet are essential for reducing the morbidity, particularly in those with pre-existing pulmonary disease. Post-operative adequate analgesia should be given by multimodal approach, including NSAIDs, opioids, patient-controlled analgesia, epidural analgesia, paravertebral blocks, and extracellular catheters. Other complications which would occur after scoliosis surgery are neurologic injury, ileus, pneumothorax, dural tears, urinary complications, and syndrome of inappropriate ADH secretion. Positioning related complications include peripheral nerve injuries, visual loss, most common being ischemic optic neuropathy and central retinal artery occlusion. Coming to the conclusion, there is no perfect anesthesia solution which will fit all the patients with kyphoscoliosis. A detailed pre-anesthetic assessment and optimization of the respiratory and cardiovascular system is imperative. Patient may have a difficult airway, so difficult airway cards should always be kept ready. Awake fiber optic intubation remains the gold standard for anticipated difficult intubation. It is important to maintain spontaneous ventilation until successful intubation. Important intraoperative considerations are vital monitoring, temperature and fluid balance maintenance, positioning, spinal cord integrity monitoring, and blood conservation. Post-operative intensive care and respiratory care and pain therapy deserve special mention. These are the references. Thank you. That's my paper.